Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Zhang.
And, once upon a time, the Venn diagram of Chinese state-run media and American media, the circles were pretty separate. However, these days, there's a lot of overlap. In the description of this live, there is a link to a New York Times article called "In This Topsy-Turvy World, Topsy-Turvy Pandemic World, China Offers Its Version of Freedom." Shelley, give us a taste for this. Well, try not to rage quit this live. You watch to the end. We need that for the algorithm.
Yeah. So I think even just reading the next sentence is basically will tell you what this is about. Surveillance and censorship bolster Beijing's uncompromising grip on power. But in the country's cities and streets, people have resumed normal lives.
The whole gist of this article is, let's see. Where's a good?
Well, I think it's like surveillance and censorship is bad, but it's also good because you can lead a normal life now under surveillance and censorship. Like it just.
Yeah, the country might have concentration camps and the government may harvest the organs of its citizens, but hey, you don't have to wear a mask.
And you can, go to a New Year's party.
Yeah. Let's see. Where are some good quotes from this? The global crisis could plant doubts about other types of freedom. Nearly half of voting Americans supported a president who ignored science and failed to take basic precautions to protect their country.
The interesting part about that particular sentence is that it links to two other New York Times articles, and where it says a president who ignores science, it actually links to an article about the Trump administration's the Trump administration.
Don't worry, we can edit it out later.
Okay, we'll edit the live.
We can't.
The Trump administration's policies on climate change. So the whole it's an article about how the Trump administration's policies on climate change prove that he's anti-science, which also shows America's coronavirus failure. So listen to this. So first of all, the article accepts all of China's coronavirus numbers as fact, which they're not. Everybody knows they covered up the virus. The number of deaths, the infection, nobody knows what's actually happening in China right now. In fact, we've done several episodes talking about various provinces going into wartime measures to protect against new coronavirus outbreaks. I think we kind of talked about this in April, but about the idea that because the propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party is now predicated on the idea that they have conquered the coronavirus.
Whereas we
are failing.
In the West.
Yeah. But the problem is that now they're kind of stuck in this catch-22 where they can never really report on the coronavirus being bad in China again.
Which they never did in the first place, really.
I mean, there's no way that there were only 4,800 deaths in China. But
4,800.
But the idea is that, now they're kind of caught in this thing where they have to, keep talking about how well they've done so they can't do poorly ever again. So now, no matter what happens with the coronavirus in China, you can never know the real numbers. So we're just stuck in that.
And again, let me read this from the New York Times, not my favorite state-run media, the Global Times. This is the New York Times. The West may find it has to work harder to sell its vision of freedom after China has made its model seem so attractive. New York Times.
Okay, so for context, this is an article published in the New York Times business section. So you got to think about who they're talking to, right?
The New York Times desperately wants to get back into China.
Well, but also it's the business section. It's for, people who want to do business in China. So it's part of a business column. So it's somewhere between an opinion piece and a reported piece, because the reporter did interview some people about how great China is doing with the coronavirus. And those people are wealthy businessmen who travel freely between the US and China and Europe and China and Hong Kong and China. So, of course, they're, it's kind of
they
funny.
have a particular worldview.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because one of the guys, he's a businessman in China since 1994, and then talked about how, over the last few years, he's thought about leaving because of the
because of the pollution and, it seemed to be getting worse and the depressing political environment. But now, hey, China is safe, energized, and free.
Yeah. There's specific lines like, okay, let me read this. This is one of the people who was interviewed. Mr. Dong, don't be 5-year-olds. His name's Mr. Dong, okay? We're adults here. Who moved to Hong Kong from New York in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis, decided to leave Hong Kong because the city has felt anemic during the pandemic, while many mainland cities seem to glow with energy and hope. And he says, I don't think I can find the kind of freedom I want in Hong Kong. Not because of the draconian national security law that has destroyed Hong Kong. It's because there's too many lockdowns.
Well, the whole, it's anemic over the I wonder why it felt anemic.
And also, that this article doesn't, another conclusion you could draw from this is perhaps the way U.S. officials have responded to the coronavirus with lockdowns that health officials say should not be done. Maybe that's the problem, not that we should be more like an authoritarian regime.
When we did that episode back in, I don't know, over in the spring about how authoritarianism is not the cure for coronavirus, it was a little too, I kind of didn't realize how bad it was going to get here at the time. But I think I've said this before, that if China hadn't locked down the way it did and then also gotten the World Health Organization to initially praise their lockdowns, there were people like Michael Ryan who were talking about how China's done a good job with stopping the spread of the coronavirus. And implicitly they were saying lockdowns are good. And then that affected, for example, Italy, the next country to have a really bad coronavirus outbreak, to then lock down their entire country. And by the way, when this was happening, Chinese state-run media and China, Twitter trolls basically were also spewing a lot of Chinese propaganda in Italy at the time about China helping Italy, about the success of China's lockdowns, this kind of stuff. So influencing other countries, and then after Italy locked down, the rest of Europe locked down. This was this whole domino effect coming essentially from Chinese state-run media.
Yeah, and I just the question is why would the New York Times, supposedly one of the most respected American media companies, write a piece like this? I thought after their year of commemorating the Bolshevik Revolution, you remember that? Where it was a year of editorials praising communism, essentially.
Some of them were not praising communism.
Some of them there was Stalin wasn't all good, Shelley.
Yeah, it was a year of articles, looking at the Russian Revolution and the effect on the rest of the world.
Yeah. But so the New York Times, for many years, so what happened was, I think in about 2002, don't quote me on that, the New York Times got an exclusive interview with then Chinese leader Jiang Zemin. After that, the New York Times was allowed into China. Over the past, I don't know, was it this year or 2019 that they got kicked out of China?
They haven't been totally kicked out of China. But there have been New York Times reporters kicked out of China, like there have been reporters from many Western media over the last year.
Yeah. So the New York Times really wants to get back into China.
So this is 2001 that Arthur Sulzberger Jr., the publisher of the New York Times, interviewed then Chinese leader Jiang Zemin.
This is a guy basically guilty of committing genocide.
And before that, the New York Times had been having trouble with having their articles blocked by the firewall in China. And after this, kind of fawning interview of the Chinese leader, then they were magically unblocked.
Imagine that.
And for years, they actually had a Chinese language version that was accessible in China under the firewall. I think it's now blocked. It's been blocked.
I think that has now been blocked, yeah. I think in 2012 or 13.
Yes, when everything was happening in China.
Yeah.
But I think we want to take questions a little bit during this live, right?
Okay.
But
don't we want to talk more about this?
I think here's the dangerous thing about this piece, which is that, for you guys watching this, right? You can see through this kind of essentially Chinese Communist Party propaganda that's coming through in this New York Times piece. I mean, literally, there are things in here that could have come straight from the Global Times. Like this line that there's no denying that China's success in containing the outbreak burnished Beijing's image, especially when compared with the failures of the United States. That's basically been the propaganda line since February from the Chinese Communist Party. So you can see through this, but for a lot of people, they won't be able to see through it.
It's the New York Times. You trust the New York Times, right?
And I think that, if you look at the comments on this article, there's a lot of like, oh, well, yeah, China's right. We should be doing things this way.
Particularly how it's framed like, this is the problem of Trump and Trump supporters.
Yes, I think that's definitely true. And also there are very insidious things in this that are a little less obvious, like the idea that there are competing ideas of freedom that are all valid, right? In the beginning, it talks about how China doesn't have certain freedoms like freedom of speech, freedom like from fear, like this kind of stuff, but they do have the freedom to move around, as if these things are all equivalent. And then that's something that Chinese propaganda has been using for a long time regarding to things like human rights, where if we have competing ideas of human rights, right? Like, sure, you think freedom of speech is a human right, but I say the freedom to not be poor is a human right. And China
has lifted so many people out of poverty.
And thus they are doing great at human rights. So that's the kind of like...
There is no truth.
Yeah, that's the kind of twisting of language and ideas ideologically that you see a lot in Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah. This is literally 1984. Freedom is slavery. We have freedom in the US, but we're slaves to being locked in our house. But in China, where you might be a slave, you're really free.
So slavery is freedom.
Slavery is freedom.
It's really pretty, like you said in the beginning, that the Venn diagram between these things is getting closer and closer. There was another article that I saw today from the Financial Times and the Global Times. The Global Times is Chinese state-run media. Financial Times is, a respected British financial newspaper, talking about the idea that, the New York Stock Exchange had said that they were going to delist 3 Chinese telecom companies from the stock exchange because the Trump administration had said they'd issued an executive order saying that, U.S. funds can't invest in
companies with Chinese military links.
Yeah, essentially. So they were going to do it, and then they suddenly said they were not going to do that anymore. They're going to leave them on. And the Global Times...
Imagine that, Wall Street.
Well, the Global Times said that, this is a sign that the Biden administration will be more flexible in dealing with China, according to Chinese experts. And then the Financial Times runs a story where they interview some equity traders who say that this is a sign that the Biden administration is going to be more flexible when it comes to dealing.
The circles overlap entirely.
It's almost the same thing. And they were interviewing this like equity trader at a brokerage in Hong Kong who was saying, now is actually a great time to buy these telecom companies.
Invest in China.
You cannot make this up. And I think that these types of articles show a lot of these, I don't know what you want to call them, like China doves, China like cheerleaders, like, you know what I mean?
It's like a China cats.
Why?
No, not China cats. More like China pussy.
I did not know where you were going to go.
It's live, baby. She can't censor me.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, the point is that these China cats are, during the last few years, they've probably felt a little down with the trade war and like all this kind of stuff where like the rest of the world seems to be like, hey, the CCP is bad.
Recognizing it for what it is.
We shouldn't treat China like a normal country that you can do business with, all this kind of stuff. Now they're like, reinvigorated.
We have a chance again.
Yeah, they feel so energized and safe and free.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I see that Anti-Patent Zero donated $5. Thank you.
but asks, do you guys believe that if Biden wins, the CCP will win the world? Oh, that's a very interesting question. Certainly on the channel, we've done an episode about what Biden's advisors say about China, people like Jake Sullivan, Kurt Campbell. And they do seem a little more on the China cat side of things. So
they say that China is like, they have a clear-eyed view. I think Jake Sullivan said this recently. They have a clear-eyed view of China as a strategic competitor.
Yeah, but in general, they see Russia as the threat. China is not, it's definitely, not a great free country, but let's still work with them. And probably if they invade Taiwan, we don't want to go to war over Taiwan, do we?
I mean, I think that's the problem, that if you see China as just a competitor, are you really being that clear-eyed about it?
You're not.
So...
Hey, Technotoad donated $9.99. Thank you. It says, over the holidays, I got Surfshark for 2 years, but the link won't work. Oh, okay. Thank you. I do have a nice tie. He said that. Okay, Technotoad, we will get back to you on that. It could be an outdated link for a deal that has expired. We'll get back to you on that. Thank you for letting us know. If anyone else has issues like that, please let us know. Rabton Samfell donated $20, says, hi guys, can you please use the map of historical Tibet instead of the autonomous state carved up by the CCP? That's interesting. I don't know what that map looks like. I'll have to...
I think it's because historical Tibet included things that are parts of like Gansu province.
Oh, okay.
And maybe Yunnan province. Like basically there are some things that are now Chinese provinces and not the autonomous zone, the autonomous region of Tibet that were part of historical Tibet.
The autonomous happy fun zone. Micro donated 100 rupees. Hello, huge fan from India. He says that China has deployed tanks opposite Indian posts at the LAC today. That's interesting. I'm definitely going to have to look into that after this live stream is done. Matthew Joshua just donated Matthew Jouch, I'm guessing, donated $20. No question, just thanks for the support. The support is really important. YouTube is still back to demonetizing us, as well as secretly unsubscribing people, not pushing out notifications, especially about really kind of sensitive topics. Like what's a recent one that we did that like nobody saw? Oh, well, I can't get my internet to work right.
I think one of the ones actually weirdly was our top 10.
Yeah, the top 10
stories of China.
Strangely bad.
The one about mortal enemies.
There was a specific one that did like really oddly bad. Oh, the Hunter Biden one we did about criminal concerns about Hunter Biden. That like no one saw that for whatever reason. So yes, thank you for your support is what I'm trying to say. Strix S donating $10 says, thanks for the truth. That's all. Thanks. Thank you. Common Sense Wisdom donated $5, says she has a clear goal to destroy the free world, focusing on the USA, using its manipulative market as bait. That is 100% true. And, we've been covering that for years. And it's strange. I think at this time now, more and more people are becoming aware of what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, while at the same time, there are more people just more and more into it, like with this New York Times article.
Yeah, and I think the New York Times article actually does an interesting thing where it's like, it's not that they don't say that there's bad stuff happening in China, right?
Because that would be over the top.
Some of the people that they interviewed even said that themselves. Like this one guy said, they treat every problem like this. It's like one size fits all. They completely take care of the problem. So when it comes to virus, it's not a bad thing, but when it comes to other problems, maybe not such a good thing. So it's, kind of acknowledging that, hey, there's some problems with the way that the Chinese Communist Party governs. But, it's also got this idea that they've completely taken care of the coronavirus. So that's basically the more important part.
Yeah, and that's backed up by Western media. Lee Murphy donated £5 and says, she, as in Xi Jinping, see you in hell, party. I like that. Thank you. Jake Mahanani donated $10, says, people think I'm crazy when I talk about China's rising power and influence. If Biden becomes president, will he allow them to do whatever they want? Good question. Again, we don't know what Biden is going to do. Over the past few years, we've seen China become one of the few bipartisan issues. So it would seem unlikely to me that there would suddenly be a complete reversal, a complete reset of U.S.-China relations. But that's something we're going to have to watch.
You do have to kind of acknowledge the fact that foreign policy is essentially
the president's
executive a function in the U.S. Like basically between the executive and legislative and judicial branch, foreign policy is basically the executive branch.
Yeah. So a good example is the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. That was something passed by Congress unanimously, I believe, or almost unanimously. But in its execution, it depends entirely upon how the president, the executive branch, actually follows through on that. So if it is a situation where the Congress knows that like a tough bill they pass on China wouldn't be really executed by the president, why bother?
Well, no, I think they might still do the bill, but then they could
just won't go anywhere.
Drag their feet for, like I think the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act had like, you had up to a year to actually sanction anybody. So there are technicalities, there are things that Congress can do, but ultimately, who's doing the diplomacy? It's the White House.
Yeah. 50027 donated $10 says Scum Tapes Records supports you. I don't know what that is, but cool. Which reminds me, if anyone is interested, Shelley and I were interviewed on the Lotus Eaters podcast with Carl Benjamin. Part 1 and Part 2 are out now. Check out his channel. It was a pretty interesting interview. We might do another one with him again soon. Dominic Y donated $20. Says, hi, I am from Chengdu, China. What are you doing? Oh, you're now in the U.S. Smart. Love your show. I would say my journey is the way to freedom. Well, that's great. Welcome to the U.S. And scrolling along. Do you want to read one? I'm on.
I feel like you're seeing totally different ones than I am, which is confusing.
I'm starting from the back. Maybe you're more from forward.
Akira Takahashi donated $25 Canadian, said, communism was a cool concept in the 19th century, but the harsh reality is that in practice, it doesn't work for anyone. Let people decide their own destinies. Good luck defending your freedoms, Taiwan.
I don't know. Marx was never cool. He was kind of a loser who was bumming money off of people. So, but
I think who made it cool was Che Guevara, or whoever made the Che Guevara shirt, essentially.
Yeah. Rand Gorg donated $9.99. As I've watched you since middle school, and I'm about to start my first year at college. Oh, congratulations! College is a lot of fun.
Wait, hold on. How old do you feel right now?
I feel as I'm full of life. I'm a child in my heart. You've been instrumental in shaping my interest in global politics. Awesome. Thank you. That is so nice to hear. And it doesn't make me feel old.
It doesn't?
It makes me feel like we're all a part of something.
Oh, that's nice. And actually surprisingly earnest.
I can be earnest. I can also be Chris.
Oh.
Enlightened Goof donated €10. It says showing that 10-second clip of people partying in Wuhan and suggesting that authoritarianism is the price we have to pay for it seems to be their favorite thing. German media is guilty of that too. Well, it makes me feel good that it's not just U.S. media. We're all screwed. So much for that earnestness, right? Oh no, that was earnest. That was just an earnest scream in the dark.
Yeah, it's funny when we first talked about doing a live about this particular article. I was like, we're just going to be us screaming, on camera.
I have no mouth, but I must scream. The Orange Ninja Turtle donated $10. Why don't you talk about the worst country of all, Britannia? Will you disavow the treatment of the Irish by the Crown? I feel like that is a political thing that I do not know enough about right now. So I feel on the spot. Shut the live down, quick. I am now totally lost in like all this. So many of you guys are giving so much support. Thank you so much.
Infrared Maynard gave 1,000 yen, I think, and said, "My state, Western Australia, provides 60% of China's iron ore, and we're rich now because of it. But I'd rather be poor and have a clear conscience."
If
only there were more people like that.
If only more people.
Specifically, the business and finance people, and yeah.
Tezel Tube donated $5 and says, what does it take to get you guys in an interview? Generally what happens is people will email us about an interview request.
So, hopefully Joe Rogan will do that one of these days.
Micro donated 400 rupees and says, your thoughts about Jack Ma gone missing?
He hasn't gone missing. He's just kind of off the radar.
He's laying low.
We've seen this a million times.
He's resting.
We know exactly what's happening. That's more on that on probably the Friday episode of China Uncensored.
I will say that it's more likely he's been fan binged than he's been bossy-lied, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like with the Chinese.
That's a very particular reference and only a very niche amount.
If you've been watching us since 2013, you'll know. Yeah.
If you started middle school and are about to start college.
But I think that, watch out for whether Jack Ma makes a sudden public appearance.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's happened in the past whenever these rumors about people having disappeared or whatever start, usually with Chinese officials that are being investigated, they'll suddenly appear publicly to kind of quash those rumors. But it also shows that they're under control, is what they call it.
Hello, fellow free people. Everything is fine.
Yeah. So we don't know if that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does soon.
Jason Walker donated 1776. I get it. Chris and Shelley, first, we love you and thank you for your phenomenal work. Second, would you be allowed to travel to China, Shanghai, for instance, in ordinary times?
Define allowed.
Well, that's my biggest concern, that we would be allowed to fly to Shanghai. But would we be allowed to leave Shanghai? That would be my bigger concern.
I think that I would be in a lot of trouble, actually.
Yes, you would be, Shelley. So you go first and let me know how it is. All right. We are probably almost out of time, but let's see. WNC8717 says, donate $20 and says, are you familiar with the CCP defense minister's speech regarding using bioweapons to depopulate the West? And do you think Dark Winter is a reference to the exercise of that name, simulating China using smallpox on the U.S.? I'm not familiar with Dark Winter. For the defense minister's speech about bioweapons, I think that was something Joshua Phillips talked about on our China Unscripted podcast. We did 2 very interesting interviews with him. I believe he talked about that in the second one. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check that out.
So, let us know if you'd like us to do more of these live streams. We did one about 2 weeks ago. We're kind of experimenting.
Yeah, we would like to maybe do more live streams on our China Unscripted channel, as this is, if you'll believe it, unscripted right now. We have no idea what we're saying before we say it.
Yeah, I think that's probably incredibly painfully obvious. As well as the part that we're also really bad at scrolling through the chats to find questions.
We'll get the tech figured out. So again, thank you for your support. It helps us make those kind of things possible. All right, at this point, I think we might have to wrap up the live. I have a very big episode that I'm writing about, can you believe it, China's influence on American media. That'll be on America Uncovered.
Where did you get that idea from?
From the New York Times. So stay tuned. Lots of exciting stuff coming out on America Uncovered, China Uncensored, and China Unscripted. Be sure you're subscribed to all of those. And if you have subscribed already, double check to make sure you're still subscribed. Anything else, Shelley?
No, I'm impressed that you got all 3 of our shows in there because we forget all the time to do that.
That's right. You can also follow me on Instagram, China Uncensored, Twitter, China Uncensored, and I now have a Parler account because people were asking me to do that. My Parler account is Lord of the Uncensoring. Pretty good.
So I think we got to take one more question because Tom A donated $100. Thank you. And said, in y'all's opinion, why does cancel culture not focus on companies like Nike and Apple? They say that they support freedom, but employ slaves and lobby Congress to keep using slaves. Also, keep fighting the good fight. I love y'all's channel.
Thank you. Well, I think that's because, these companies need to focus on what's happening in
places that they can affect inside the United States. The United States, they don't want to talk about the problems of other countries. That's not really. They're customers.
China is a customer?
Yeah, China's a customer.
You're basically quoting Mark Cuban right
yeah,
now.
I am. I'm also going to go invest in some Chinese bonds. Right.
Well, I think the reason is that I think that there can be more focus on this because we've seen it happen before when something really egregious happens, like with the NBA. Remember, there were people actually protesting at NBA games after the whole Daryl Morey situation with Hong Kong. And it's happened with, I think the reason that Google got shamed into at least publicly stopping their Project Dragonfly, which was a censored search engine for China, is because there was so much backlash publicly about that. But I think for Nike and Apple, part of it is that, it's not as well known those things where it didn't explode in the same way in the media and stuff like that as the NBA thing did. And then part of it is also that a lot of companies are complicit in that particular way that Nike and Apple are complicit, right?
Definitely.
Like the NBA thing, that was like a one-off situation. But Dragonfly also kind of different because Google is such a large tech company. You don't hear about how Hewlett-Packard has been helping the Chinese surveillance state, which they have. Or, I think Apple and Nike using Uyghur forced labor in China. A lot of other companies are in trouble for the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just...
Also, just Nike has so much money to put into advertising to make itself seem like, really great social justice warrior. But as for exposing how Nike is using ethnic Uyghur slave labor, all you have is like us and like other China watchers. And we don't quite have the reach that the Nike marketing team has.
I mean,
or Apple.
Similar with Apple, right? I mean, they literally have their own...
They are the size of country GDPs.
Yeah, and they have their own streaming platform where they've said that they're not going to have anything on there that talks about China. So
our Apple Plus China Uncensored is not going to happen?
Yeah, I don't think that pitch is going to work out. China
Uncensored Minecraft Let's Play. That'll be good.
Do you remember when we got censored on Apple stores?
I do.
It was their app stores in
we were like
Hong
on
Kong.
Roku or something.
Yeah, we had an app on Roku a couple years ago, and it was in the App Store in it was blocked from the App Store in mainland China.
Obviously.
It was also blocked from the App Store in Hong Kong.
Kind of surprising.
And then Taiwan.
Unacceptable.
So then we made a fuss and got a petition going and whatever, and they unblocked it in Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But
quietly.
Yes, but the whole thing was just like, why did they block it in Taiwan? It just shows how...
Future-proofing.
Oh, okay. That's why.
All right. And so, Shelley, you were going to tell people your social media that they can follow you?
Oh, yes. My Twitter is @Sheljang, SHELZHANG.
You really should get something a little more catchy, like Lord of the Uncensored.
I'm sorry I used my name. I'm also on Instagram, but I don't really post a lot of China stuff on Instagram. Yeah.
So thanks for joining us for the live. Let us know if you'd like us to do more. Let us know what we could do to improve. And as always, thank you for your support. I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley John.
And we'll see you next time. This is the part where we awkwardly stare at the camera while the live starts to shut down and we don't actually know when it's off. Is it off?
Is it off yet?
Is it off? Is it still going?